I don't know about you, but the one thing that ruins happiness for me is chaos. I like things just to go in order, just everybody do what they're supposed to do, and never anything be disorderly, just smooth operations, and some days that lasts for about 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and then 5 minutes it's okay, and for 2 minutes it just, days are just filled with chaos, it seems, anymore. I don't know when people became so disorderly, when people lived such chaotic lives. I guess it's always been there. I just haven't noticed it to the degree that it actually exists in this world that we live in. And I think that that's a major problem why so many people are unhappy, because of the disorder that they have in their lives. And that's why I've stated at times, sometimes I've talked to people, I'll put it that way, in religious type discussions, that sometimes I feel that the best thing that I can do religiously for some of the people around me that I work with is just to show an orderly life. And sometimes that's very difficult because of the amount of chaos that just drives me crazy. But to try to show order, to try to show that, hey, you know, if you do something right the first time, then you don't have to waste the time of doing it over again, trying to get it done right. It's just, there's so much that goes by people that they simply do not understand. They can't get the concept of it anymore. And I don't know whether it's because they weren't taught as children, they haven't worked in environments where they've had to do things in certain ways, or it's caused tremendous problems, maybe caused accidents, caused death. I just don't know what it is. Maybe it's just a careless attitude in society. So it's probably been there all the time, but now I think maybe it's because I'm old. It's just getting to the point where it aggravates me more. But I know it was there for Paul back in the first century. And what he was going through, I know it aggravated him with what the early Christians in the preaching and the teaching, as he was Saul of Tarsus, what he saw them doing, their preaching aggravated him because he thought that was disorderly. But then when he became a Christian and he received the persecution, that kind of helped him to remember what he had gone through, to develop some patience and to find some happiness through all of that. So like everything else in life, it's built on a foundation. If you don't have a foundation there, you don't have the stability, you're going to have chaos. So even in bad times, even when things are terrible around us, in the chaos, we can find happiness if we have a foundation built for happiness. And Paul talks about that in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 and 9. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not driven to despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Yeah, all these bad things are happening, but yet they haven't caused an ultimate collapse of our internal faith system. They haven't destroyed us spiritually. And we talked a little bit about that last Sunday evening in the lesson. We talked about this particular passage. It came up. But now we're going to build on this passage to look at that and say, okay, well, let's look how we build this house, this structure, let's start with this foundation so that we get it to the point where all this chaos does not interfere with our happiness. to the degree where it brings us down. So how does it seem that Paul could rejoice and be happy in the circumstances of life which he was under? He understood the 4 rules of happiness. Number 1, depend upon God. Depend upon God. Don't depend upon people. Don't depend on me. I might let you down. You know that, right, Charlie? I might let you down. I might stop along the way to services sometime and help somebody change a flat tire. Don't depend on me being here on time. You know, just don't depend on me. Depend upon God. And you know everything's going to be all right because he is dependable to a fault. Now, he may not do everything just the way we want him to do it, the way we'd expect him to do it, but he's going to do it in the right way, the good way. It's going to be the way that's best for us. He's stepping back, he's looking at the picture, and our problem is we're in the picture. It's hard for us to step out of the picture and see the picture when we're in it, but he sees it from the outside. So he knows what's going on totally. And so we live in an age of independence, don't we? Yeah, it didn't used to be this way. There was always the boss over somebody. I mean, not just the boss at work. The boss. You had a king, and you gave your allegiance to the king. And if you didn't give your allegiance to the king, you know what happened? You were destroyed. You were killed. And that's just the way it was. But now we're independent, and that independence has turned into a brashness to the point where we think that we don't need anybody. We don't even need God, it doesn't seem like anymore. So we want to take credit for all the good things that happen, and we want to blame everybody else for all the bad things that happen. We don't want responsibility for the bad things that we cause, even the bad things that we cause in our own lives. That wasn't my fault, that was somebody else's fault. Can't help it, you know. Well, freedom is cherished in our nation, but freedom can only come by our dependence upon God. The founders of our nation understood that. That's why they wrote the things that they wrote. You go back and look at the literature of that time. There were a few atheists then. There were a few agnostics then. But for the most part, they knew they had to depend upon what God said if they wanted to be independent of the people who were trying to keep them from happiness, right? The pursuit of happiness in that's written about in the Declaration of Independence. So we've got to be careful about the things that we would depend on that really aren't dependable. Look at Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 23. I know, O Lord, that the way of man is not in himself, that it is not in man who walks to direct his steps. I'm not even dependable for myself, okay? And Jeremiah also talks about the heart being not dependable to make decisions for us. There's a Bible study thing that just came out on the olive tree. I haven't had time to look at it. Are emotions valuable for making decisions? Something of that nature. And I want to read it because, you know, in essence, most of the time, no. Don't let your emotions make decisions for you because you want to rationalize things out. You want to be reasonable, logical things. But be careful. It's not within us. Don't depend on ourselves. Depend upon God. Psalm 23:4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And what is God's rod and staff? Well, that's His Word. That was it for David. It was the law of Moses. It was the things that would keep him under control. And we talked before about the ancient landmarks. Okay, don't remove the ancient landmarks. But it was the boundaries. You know, when God says, do not commit whatever sin that is there, what he's saying is, bless you. Got another one?
I was thinking it was.
Oh, you think it was, okay. You know, and what he's saying is, I'm putting up this boundary stone, and I'm saying, don't go beyond this, okay? So don't go beyond here. The rod and the staff of God's correction is there. And you know what he's really saying? Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself. Think, well, you know, that sin is a whole lot of fun. That sin will bring me a whole lot of happiness. And it might for about that long. And then all of a sudden the bad things set in. So the rod and the staff, God's correction, a dependence upon God and His direction, His instructions, will bring us an ultimate happiness. Matthew 28:20. We are to teach people, the apostles were to teach people, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you, Jesus told them. Behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. Why? Because that's going to bring the ultimate happiness, a dependence upon God through Jesus Christ, like the life that He led. And that was ultimately proved by His resurrection and His ascension to heaven, His reunification with the Father. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16, so we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. Yeah, I've talked about it here. This thing's falling apart. It is. More and more, it seems like every day, this thing's falling apart. The inside doesn't have to. When I talk about the inside, the spiritual thing doesn't have to. It doesn't. I can keep it just as strong as it has ever been, even though the outer shell is falling apart. But it's going to be because I depend upon God. It's going to be the same way for each and every one of us. So, hey, there's that part of that foundation, right? Foundation for happiness, 4 rules for happiness. Depend on God, and He'll take care of it all. Secondly, accept your lot in life. Your lot in life. What's your lot in life? It's not the consequences of who you are, where you are, what you've done. Okay? It's the things in life that you have no control over. Who your parents were, where you were born, what country you were born in, what color your skin is, okay? Things of that nature. It doesn't mean about the sin you've committed, all right? Don't blame your current attitudes and actions on things that you have no control over. Well, I did this because that's what my folks did. That's the way I was brought up. That's why I do this. Well, you can change it. Right? But the lot in life, accept your lot in life. Accept, yeah, that's how I came into this world. That's what I was when I began, and that's how I grew up. It's like David, and I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. Because I'm just picking this off the top. I think it's Psalm 51, isn't it? I was conceived in iniquity and brought forth in sin. We talked about that. Okay, that isn't the sinner. I was born a sinner type deal. But it says, I was born into this world where sin and iniquity exist. But that's no excuse for me to continue in sin and iniquity as I come to know God. And as I learn that sin and iniquity is wrong in the sight of God. All right? Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect, but it means I start doing something about the sin and the iniquity in my life. But the law is, I live in a fallen world where sin and iniquity dwells. Except that some things in life will never be different, but work to change the things that you can. Right? Great illustration of this. How many of you have heard of the Serenity Prayer? Okay? How many lines are in that Serenity Prayer?
Not very many.
Just know the important parts, right? Listen to this. Here's the part we know, right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That's about me, okay? Courage to change the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference. And that's what all the little plaques say, right? That's not the end of it. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking, as he did, that's Jesus, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever and ever in the next. Amen. Hey, that adds a lot to it, doesn't it? About that foundation. Okay? Yeah. And there it is, accepting our lot in life. Because sometimes we are put in amazingly difficult situations. Sometimes they're not of our making. But there we are. You know, the Apostle Paul in some places talks about, hey, are you a slave? Don't try to not be a slave. What? Why wouldn't you? Well, he's talking about particular situations where, you know, don't do wrong things to get out of a situation like that. There might come a good situation where you can get out of it. There are worse things than being a slave in this world. All right? That's hard for us to accept, isn't it? But that's the way of this fallen world. Don't kill your master to be free. Because what does that do? That puts you in danger of eternal judgment. So learning to take it, as he says here, it's like this one day at a time, living one day at a time, enjoying 1 minute at a time. And listen, when the world is so chaotic as it is, it's hard to enjoy it sometimes for a whole minute, because that chaos comes at you so quickly. Listen to what Paul says in Philippians 4:11 through 13. He says, not that I am speaking of being in need. Why would he speak of being in need? Philippians is one of the prison epistles, which means he was in prison. He was in prison in Rome for preaching the gospel. He'd been arrested, thrown in prison, may have been in a dungeon. For I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So, accepting our lot in life, how do we do that? Third rule. Live in the present. live in the present. Now, go back here. Accept your lot in life. Okay, and that's a lot. Circumstances you can't change. Who your parents were, where you were born, what color your skin is, anything of that nature, you can't change that. Learn to live with it, okay? But live in the present. Live in the present. Don't live in the past. It's over with, right? Can't change the past. What about the future? It's not even here. We worry so much about the future that we don't find any happiness today. Jeremy Taylor. I don't know who Jeremy Taylor is. I tried to look it up. I think he was a famous person a long time ago. But what he said is important, okay? That's the important thing. He wrote, enjoy the blessings of this day if God sends them. Enjoy the blessings of this day if God sends them. And the evils bear patiently and sweetly, for only this day is ours. We are dead to yesterday and not born to tomorrow. We're dead to yesterday, not born to tomorrow. This is what we got right here. Cherish today. Live for today. Live for the present. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 34, therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. Yeah, there's enough trouble and chaos right here today to not really worry about. Don't borrow trouble for tomorrow's trouble. Don't borrow it. Bring it into today. Beadle, who is another one of those important people, for a lot of people back years ago, said, if I am faithful to the duties of the present, God will provide for the future. Live in the present. Live in the present. Number 4. This is so very important. Aim for a worthwhile achievement. Are we achieving anything in our lives? Do we have a goal? Hey, I don't care if that goal is losing 10 pounds or losing a couple inches or getting the next educational degree or name something else. Shooting. Oh.
Okay, my goal was full-time with me.
Yeah, she got to go. Only my wife would want to set a goal for working.
I'm sorry, but you said me.
Get the house clean.
Get the house. Wow, yeah, there you go.
I'm still attempting
It
that.
depends on who you hire to do it, you know. But do we have something that we want to achieve, and an achievable goal? You know, if we set a goal, and you know, there are things that I would like to do that I know at this point in time that I can't do. Okay, but I think about it, and I think about it for a little while, and then I say, okay, can't do that, so let me think about something that I can achieve and set that goal and try to achieve it. You see? And that's what we do. So, you know, that achieving or setting a goal that you can't achieve soon, it's almost setting yourself up for failure. Don't set yourself up for failure. Look for something that you can do, but make it worthwhile. You know, something else. I just want to get the yard mowed. Well, I did that. That wouldn't be, but that would be a good one because I've already got it done. Okay. Aim for a worthwhile achievement. Another one of those old fellows, lived long ago, said, the man who succeeds above his fellows is the one who, early in life, clearly discerns his object, and towards that object habitually directs his powers. Even genius itself is but fine observation strengthened by fixity of purpose Every man who observes vigilantly and resolves steadfastly grows unconsciously into genius. You know what he's saying? You know what he's saying? Each and every one of us is a genius, or at least has the capability of being a genius, if we only put ourselves to it. That's amazing. What's a genius? We've heard it pretty much if you watch any news. Trump calls himself a stable genius. His opponents call him an unstable genius, you know, whatever. But what do people consider genius? You know, is it just a high IQ? You know, there are a lot of people out there with high IQs that don't achieve anything. Genius is putting that together. And a person doesn't have to have a high IQ to achieve something. Now, who did we talk about last Sunday evening in American history who, because of his faith, became a great scientist and continued that? George Washington Carver. There's a man, a genius, but why? Because he found something to pursue, and he pursued it vigilantly. And look what he did. He changed the face of agriculture. Wow. A worthwhile achievement. Improved the lives of so many people. Each and every one of us has that built into us. But we settle for the ordinary. We settle for the average. We settle for just getting by. We don't strive, we don't reach. The key to success is to first set a goal, not 5 or 10 or 20 little things to accomplish. Right. What do they say? What's your bucket list? How many things do you have on your bucket list? How many? You don't, do you have it? You don't even have it. You got 10 things on your bucket list. If you change that to 1, do you think you get it accomplished? You see, if you focus, just do it. Here's what I want to do. Go do it. I've got 10 things I want to do. I never get them done. Wow. Makes sense. It's like jumping out of an airplane or going to Hawaii or climbing Mount Everest. I'm not going to climb Mount Everest. You might want to. If you do, more power to you. Go do it. Go do it. Just don't talk about it. Achieve it. Set one overriding goal to which everything else in life falls into place. You know what? I don't want to work a whole lot for the rest of my life. My wife doesn't either. She just wants to work long enough that she gets her 10% discount card for the rest of life. That's it. That's an insider joke that we have, but it's true. It's true. So the override, the one goal, focus to it. Everything should, but make it worthwhile. Make it worthwhile. When we do this, all those other things become what they truly are: winds, larks. If they happen, okay. If not, okay. And that's not necessarily wrong unless they take the place of that one overriding goal, that achievement that would make you so happy. And you would say, thank you, God, for helping me get to this point in time. Philippians 3:13-14, brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do. Listen to that. Paul's one thing. You think he was only doing one thing? No, he was doing maybe 100 things, but it was with one unique purpose. Everything funneled into this one purpose. But one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. I think that's what George Washington Carver was talking about when he addressed Congress. I looked in the Bible. I asked God what to do with the peanut. There it is. What goal do we have? What achievement do we want to have? So, conclusion. I paraphrased that. This is my own paraphrase. All right? So, you can disregard this totally if you want to.
You're one of those guys back then.
Well, in a few years, I'll be one of those old guys back then. Okay? But it's a paraphrase. This one thing I do, regardless of everything that has happened in the past, regardless of anything that will happen in the future, and regardless of the evil that might befall me today, I press toward being like Jesus. With that as my goal, happiness will flood my soul. I think that's what Paul's saying. Okay? He probably said it a whole lot better than I did, but this is a little simpler for me to understand. Being like Jesus will bring us that happiness. That's all I've got. Unless you just want me to add. No, nobody's shaking their head yes. All right, thank you so much for your time and for your attention. If you have a need this evening, please let your request be made known as we stand and sing the invitation.